Well, welcome, my friends. It is Friday, the 14th of November, 2024. I am Delbridge, and down here you see my Benchmark Realty affiliation. So here we've got it today. Now, got kind of a long story. We'll get through on multiple tabs. I've got, oh gosh, maybe 10 of them open for you, and we're not going to go into it because we won't have that time. But we'll just hit the top. We'll have it as a compendium. Now, a compendium isn't just a menagerie of unrelated, disparate things. A compendium is a sort of a collection of a centralized theme type of work where you summary and executive summaries of executive summaries on a single subject. That's what we've got for you here. We'll look at. But before we do that, in 2 days, Saturday, we're going to have the Dog Pound fighting in Athens. Yes, the Georgia Bulldogs will be taking on the Hound Dogs of East Tennessee, and hopefully we'll have each of the three major contenders for SEC football down by 2 games. Alabama lost 2 games, one of them at the hand of the East Tennessee people that shall not be named, and then Alabama beat Georgia just by a little bit, and now Georgia needs to beat Tennessee so that we can complete the triangle of life, and that's what we're going for. All right, let's get into this. We'll be right back after the intro. If you like this content, please go to CallDelToSell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you when each Friday's blog has been uploaded. Thank you. Today I have something that kind of gets back to something we heard around Wednesday, I guess it was, of last week, about a week old, and I have to confess it caught me cold when I first heard it. And I thought, well, that's an odd statement to be making just one day after, you know, the beginning. So we look at this right here, and this is from CBS News. You'll have all of these links in the description of the status chat over on the page, the YouTube page. But look at this. It says Fed Chair Jerome Powell says he won't resign if Donald Trump asks him to step down. Now, I have to stop right there and say, what the heck? I hadn't heard anything about that. I don't know where this was coming from. Sure, I don't necessarily agree with there being political. Remember, we knew we weren't going to get any major change in interest rates from December of 2023 till at least the third quarter, depending on what happened. And we kept seeing the labor numbers fiddled, so it looked like they were going to get the numbers to give them the justification to do what they want to do. So we know it. But up until like a week before it happened, the various districts were saying, no, we maybe we don't need to give one at all. Maybe we need to just do 25 at best, and some difference of opinion. And what do we get? We got twice what we expected, and the markets reacted differently. Now, we're very fortunate if you go back when it happened, back in September. You know, I was first against it, going, well, because it's very political. It was like, you know, manipulative. But at the same time, I was very fearful that going into 2 cuts of 50 basis points, especially if it's followed by 2 25s, is exactly how 2008 got started when we had such problems, right? It started with a 50, then 2 25s, and just kept on going. And I think there was even a 75 and some more in there. But the stock market, the equities market, didn't react that way. They looked at it like, yeah, well, it's political, so it's not going to upset our apple cart. Now, I like that part. And after that, I thought, well, that's pretty good. Maybe it'll give our credit card holders some break. And speaking of credit cards, let's look right here. Fred, you know, this is St. Louis. Our buddies at St. Louis, consumer loans, credit cards, and other revolving plans, all commercial banks. We see what happened. Came back trucking right along, and we are now at an all-time high once again. October, that's over $1 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. I look at that and I see, or in other words, as of the observation as of 2024, 10/30, we have a 1,083 8864. And of course, we have 4 on this side of the decimal point because these are billions of dollars. So it would be trillion, 1.083 trillion dollars. How about that? Here, by dropping that down just a little bit. And then they were up until about a week before. The pre-comments from the various people in the Fed, when they spoke, they were like, maybe we ought not do but one more in the entire rest of the year, depending on, because we don't want to reignite inflation. And then the week before, suddenly it becomes unanimous. They dropped it 25 basis points. And that was right after the election, which was on Tuesday. We had the results on Wednesday. So this is why this kind of surprised me a little bit. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says he won't step down. Now, this says this was updated on the 8th. It doesn't say when it was originally posted. But when we look at it, I guess, let's bring that up bigger. See, we see the date, November. That's updated. So it came out pretty much immediately after Powell says he's not going to. I thought, well, why in the world? That's such an odd thing to say. Because normally, Fed people, when they're proposed by a president and they get confirmed with the consent and advice of Congress, presidents don't normally mess with them. So what is he talking about? I'm thinking to myself. Yes, he's been a little bit political, and yes, he kind of, in my opinion, if you've watched the videos, he definitely messed up when he tried to cover for the party when they printed all that money in 2020, and then they took to 2021. We've looked at that chart before. 2021, before inflation started to tick off, and then they told us, Yellen and crew, it's not really a thing. It's just transitory. And he said, we don't even know, Powell himself is out there quoted, we don't know what causes inflation, so this is not a big. And it took 2 years before they started raising rates. Meanwhile, any of the commercial loans that you might have had, or I might have had, or friends of ours might have had, are timing out of their short period that they normally borrow for short periods of time. And if you had to refi, by the time Powell got around to putting the rates up to try to control inflation was way out of hand, and so was the interest rate. Now everybody's kind of stuck, so we might want to lower it. Well, now let's look at this right here. So why would they necessarily be the way they are? Well, here we are with one of our, because we want to play fair with everybody. This happens to be from NPR, which is typically left-leaning, but it says what it says. And we're going to go down here to 2017. Head of Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond resigns over improper disclosure. We're not going to read this, but we get the idea. We've got a Fed member doing something probably they shouldn't do. And that's if they actually quit. Most time they don't quit. They just declare themselves, we didn't do anything wrong. Now let's look at another one. This is from the DOJ's office, District of Maryland. Okay, so we're mixing this up. I don't want to be accused of being partisan. I'm a math guy. I like to look at the facts, and I can't discount party, pretend I'm on Team Red or Team Blue. I have to be on Team Me and Team You. All right, what is this? This is March 19th, 2021. Former employee of the Fed. See this right here? Attorney General's Office, District of Maryland. Former employee of the Federal Reserve Board pleads guilty to theft of government property. Let's check it out. Fortune magazine, not one of my favorites, but there we are. Get it up to the top. It says Bostic. This is an Atlanta Fed guy. This is the current Atlanta Fed guy, if I'm not mistaken. I recognize that face. Bostic guilty of breaking the rules, but not insider trading. Let's read that again, or I'll read it to you. Bostic guilty of breaking rules, but not insider trading. So, it seems like everybody but you and I, the working class people trying to keep food on our table and clothes on our back, decent shoes on the feet, we don't get the benefit of all the insider trading. You see, the Fed investigates itself most of the time, just like it comes up and says, well, we didn't do anything wrong. So this is very recent. Maybe there's some dirt under that particular bush right there, and we're just not getting to it yet. Maybe that's what some of the investigations that we may be privy to coming up. How about this one? This is another time. This is 2024. Federal official broke ethic rule but didn't violate insider trading. Same Mr. Bostic, Atlanta Fed, Raphael Bostic. What about this one? This is from The Guardian. This is a little left-leaning, but it's British. I wish this top part would go away. We don't need to see any energy drinks. I'm full of energy and everything else. The risk Jamie Dimon, I don't know if I can get it further enough up there, the risk Jamie Dimon poses to Federal Reserve System's legitimacy. And you know who Jamie Dimon is? He runs the head of a bank, a big bank, one of those too big to fail banks. And of course, he's a devout Democrat. Well, you say, well, you're starting to drag some politics into this, Del. I don't know if I like the politics being drawn into this conversation. So let's go somewhere else. Let's go somewhere fairly independent. How about Yahoo News? Federal Reserve employees overwhelmingly donate to Democratic causes. This is done on the 12th. It is just 2 days old. We knew that. So, you know, when we stop to think about it, at some point, it appears like the wheels grease the cart and the cart grease the wheels, and together they're one big happy family. What about this? There's only one way that Trump can fix Powell's opposition at the Fed. And this is an opinion piece. And the reason I bring this to you is if you follow me on Facebook, I had a Facebook friend explain to me when I asked, what is this about? The Fed saying he won't quit and he can't be fired by Trump. And I said, yes, he can. He can certainly make him want to resign. I've never known a Fed chair that was involved in a controversy as some of these that we've seen, and there are more than Bostic and the rest of them, that was asked to resign by a sitting president that didn't resign when asked. But if they do, they can be deposed. Yes, they can. They're nominated by the executive branch, confirmed with the advice and consent of the Senate. They can certainly investigate him and find just cause. And if they find just cause, any member of the Fed can be sent away. So that is just what it is. Now, if we look at this, they're going to go through and pretty well much say what I said. But since this is somebody that printed this after I made my Facebook post, I'm feeling quite chuffed today. I'm feeling large and in charge. All right, now we spent enough time on this nonsense. Let's take a look at how it might affect where we're going. Well, let's look at our 30 years from one of our favorite source, which is Mortgage News Daily, because this is their industry. This is what they do. This is not my rate. I'm not offering you any loan, but we'll look at this because we're going to talk about one more thing I may have mentioned previously. Let's get a zoom in on that. The statement coming out of the same person who was questioning that the Fed chair could not be dismissed by the president said, let's see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. All right, here we got a bigger picture. He said, well, this market is not liking the Trump election. Well, if we look to see when we reversed direction back here on the blue one, the Mortgage News Daily, we actually reversed back here 9/17. So we get all the way through the month of 10 into 11, and when did we have the election? We were already shooting way up, and here we have it, the 4th. It wasn't until after the election, and it looks like we steadied out quite a bit. Now we've gone up since then a little bit from here to here and here to here, but this is no different before election or post election. It's just we had that big giant slide back when it was initially claimed. But we also see that we came down again too. So what does this mean for our futures? Well, the mortgage market responds differently. The bond market responds differently yet. And again, if we go into the cryptos and all the other equities and the things of that nature, they all have a mind of their own. But what do they have in common? Well, some may like high interest rates. Some may like low interest rates. Like if you're selling a real estate investment trust, if you're selling that, you might want to see rates come down. Of course, there may be a reason why you want them to go high as well. But what do we have when we look at this? What is the justification? If the Fed needs to work, the Fed needs to work based upon not politics, but economic reality. Here we are at our favorite place, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. We want to look at the CPI because it came out this week, and we will notice that this right here is down 4.9%. Energy is down. That's what's pulling the headline down to the lowest October not seasonally adjusted, right? CPI for all items rise 0.2%, shelter up, housing. So nationwide housing and equivalent rents are going to be up. In October, the consumer price index for all consumers rose 0.2%, seasonally adjusted, and rose 2.6% over the last 12 months. But here's the part we want to watch. Down here, this 3.3%. This is the core. The index for all items less food and energy increased 0.3% in October, up 3.3% over the year. It's national, not seasonally adjusted. So what are we seeing? We're seeing that inflation has actually not been in control when they cut the rates both times. In fact, they've gone up since then, both times. If we covered last CPI we discussed, it was the latest that we had booked. And what was it up? It was up higher than normal because energy was low. So what does that mean? It means that if we've played the cards wrong by Jerome Powell and the Fed and not kept the rates high to stave off inflation, we're still hurting on our credit card balances and whatnot in our loans. But if we can't knock the other stuff we have to pay for down by controlling inflation, then we might have a problem. And it may, of course, happen post-election. So, they'll be talking politics instead of fixing the situation. And that's my problem. I don't mind talking the political aspects of the problem, but it's the problem we want to solve. So how about that? Hello, I'm Delbridge of Benchmark Realty, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. If you are currently unrepresented and would like to know how to compare up to 3 properties side by side and room by room, then go over to my new YouTube channel, CallDelToSell. That's 1 L and Del, no spaces. Watch the demo on Real Scout, and then call me and we'll set up your exclusive ad-free account today. All right, well, we got our numbers here. And just let me just point out one thing one more time for those who may be Van Gogh listeners. I don't really like the politics of it. And there's enough dirty to go on both sides of it. Right now, we're just coming out of one set of people playing the rules, the banking. I'd just rather see you and I catch a little break here versus big money, big banks, big donor type things. And when you see where the article that the Fed employees are giving overwhelmingly to one side may kind of cut into some of the validity of the Fed's data and maybe go to some of the Fed's motives. Because ultimately, we've got to control the inflation first. I know we just looked at all those. It's just not good all the way around. And it's going to take a while to unsquirrel this mess when we get started, after the first of the year. And we've got to go through all the holiday season between now and then. But we have our numbers. Last week, 11/7/24, we had 24,062 in the opportunities. That came down from the previous period. 38,14 were the under contracts still showing. That actually came down as well, and the ratio integer-wise between the two of those stayed the same as 16. This week, 24,224 were the opportunities. That is up a little bit. And we have 39,22 were the under contract still showing, and those both rose, so we actually still have a 16%, or the ratio between there is 16%. So there we have it. Remember, don't get downhearted, but December will be interesting to look for to see what they do and to watch for the other indices that come in to see what we're doing as far as inflation goes. Because again, right now it's like trying to catch a box of knives that somebody's thrown up in the air. You're trying to catch them all, and each one of them can hurt you. We've got to have inflation down. We've got to have interest rates down. We've got to have car prices come down. We just need a lot of help from a lot of different areas to pull this all together. We'll see you next week.